Disney's live-action remake of Snow White has spiraled into a whirlwind of split opinions, political controversy, and ballooning expenses. What was initially planned as a grand tribute to a beloved fairy tale has evolved into a constantly growing source of drama, raising the question, has Disney finally pushed things too far? From casting choices to behind-the-scenes tensions, there's a lot to dig into. More critically, Hollywood insiders are beginning to ask, could this growing mess become one of Disney's most massive box office flops in recent memory? It all started with so much potential, a rising young star, an iconic story, and a powerhouse studio famous for magical hits. But once Rachel Zegler was announced as the new face of Snow White, the internet instantly divided. Some praised it as a fresh, inclusive update to a timeless classic. Others slammed it as a betrayal of the original tale, which famously emphasized Snow White's skin being as white as snow. But if you think that casting debate alone was enough to spark endless fan wars, you haven't seen the rest of the chaos. Scandals that reach far beyond casting drama, diving deep into social media firestorms, budget disasters, and relentless fan criticism. Whispers in Hollywood suggest the film's cost has skyrocketed to eye-popping levels, possibly exceeding $300 million. On the record, official estimates hover between $200 and $250 million. But many believe that reshoots, rewrites, and production delays have pushed the total much higher. Disney, typically confident in its live-action revivals, now finds itself anxiously watching the numbers. Creating a hit blockbuster is already a tough challenge, but when you pour millions into costumes, visual effects, elaborate sets, and multiple rounds of filming, the break-even line rises fast. Early forecasts offered a glimmer of hope, with analysts predicting an opening weekend that could keep the film afloat. But as real data began to emerge, those optimistic predictions quickly faded. Now, many industry watchers expect an opening nowhere near enough to justify the extravagant budget. At this point, the phrase box office bomb is starting to loom large, threatening to add Snow White to Disney's growing list of flops unless something changes fast. Much of the online uproar began when Disney cast Rachel Zegler as Snow White, a move that unleashed digital backlash few saw coming. The original Snow White is arguably Disney's most legendary princess, a cultural icon since the 1937 animated film. Generations have admired her delicate features, jet black hair, and most notably, skin described as being white as snow. So when the studio revealed a Latina actress in the role, critics questioned whether the casting veered too far from the story's foundation. Some cited the brothers' grim source material, arguing the film was rewriting a classic in a way that disrespected tradition. On the flip side, supporters argued that fairy tales belong to everyone, and that the real magic of Snow White has always been in her kindness, hopefulness, and inner strength, not just her appearance. They applauded Disney's attempt to make the character resonate with a wider audience. As debates raged, Rachel Zegler entered the spotlight herself, defending the casting choice. She argued that a princess in a fantasy story shouldn't be limited by how she looks, especially in today's changing world. While that position won her praise from some fans, it also fueled backlash from traditionalists who saw the remake as a politically correct reimagining that diluted Disney's original charm. What truly lit the fandom on fire, though, were Zegler's blunt comments about the 1937 version of Snow White. She criticized the original film for focusing heavily on a love story involving a prince with little personality, and for portraying Snow White as a passive character simply waiting to be rescued. According to Zegler, the new adaptation intends to reframe the lead as a strong, empowered woman rather than a helpless damsel. Her points weren't completely baseless. Women in film have often been limited to passive, sidelined roles. Yet, for a vocal segment of fans, it felt like she was tearing down a cherished piece of Disney heritage. Social media erupted, filled with passionate defenses of the original Snow White, praising its artistry, cultural importance, and timeless charm. Suddenly, the debate wasn't just about whether Rachel Zegler was right or wrong in her critique, but whether a Disney princess should ever speak out against one of the company's most treasured classics. The standoff quickly became a symbol of Hollywood's ongoing struggle, how to update beloved tales without erasing the nostalgia that fans hold so dearly. Just when it seemed like the casting uproar might finally fade, Rachel Zegler's political opinions stormed into the spotlight. During the 2024 presidential election, Donald Trump secured re-election, sparking chaos across social platforms. In a fiery moment, Zegler posted to Instagram, voicing her deep frustration and calling another 4 years under Trump a future she wanted no part of. She didn't hold back, going so far as to wish that Trump and his supporters would never experience peace. Another lightning rod for the Snow White remake has been the revamp, or complete removal, of the iconic Seven Dwarfs. Early buzz suggested that Disney hoped to avoid portrayals that could be viewed as outdated or offensive, fueling speculation that the beloved characters would be reimagined as magical beings. While the details have stayed somewhat unclear, leaked, set photos appeared to confirm a group of colorful, human-sized companions rather than the traditional dwarfs. Instantly, loyal fans cried foul, accusing Disney of discarding a cornerstone of the classic for the sake of political correctness. At the center of every major film project lies one undeniable truth: profit. No matter the social media noise or behind-the-scenes drama, the ultimate test of success is the box office. Initially, Snow White showed some modest potential. Early projections put its opening weekend in the $60 to $70 million range. While not groundbreaking for a production of this scale, it could have signaled a stable launch. That optimism, however, was short-lived. Revised forecasts painted a darker outlook, predicting an opening closer to the mid to low $50 million mark, or worse, dipping into the $40 million range. For a film with a rumored $300 million budget, that's a recipe for financial disaster. So, is Snow White on track to become a cautionary tale about straying too far from the source material? Or is there still hope for a last-minute turnaround? At this stage, anything is possible. Audiences may flood theaters out of sheer curiosity, driven by the very controversies that critics believe could sink the movie. In today's media-fueled world, even bad press can amplify visibility. But with a skyrocketing budget, heated backlash, and polarizing politics, a stable and profitable outcome feels more like a long shot than a sure thing. For Disney, the stakes are sky high. A failure of this scale could shake the foundations of its live-action remake strategy. Already, fans and analysts are starting to wonder if the endless cycle of reboots is finally losing steam. Some argue the brand needs a reset, original stories or more thoughtful reimaginings that preserve the spirit of the classics without alienating loyal followers. Others believe the storm surrounding Snow White could spark a much-needed conversation about inclusion, representation, and the delicate balance between modernization and tradition. In the end, maybe the most unexpected twist of all is this: a story centered around a kind-hearted princess has ignited one of the fiercest cultural debates in Hollywood. Snow White was always about purity and perseverance, but now it's become a symbol of societal change and bold creative risks. For better or worse, whether the film defies expectations or crumbles under its own controversy, one thing's for sure: no one will ever see this fairy tale quite the same way again.